Okay, good morning and good afternoon or good evening, depending on when you listen to this slide presentation. So my name is Victor, and I'm going to be your anchor for this training. This is the Ethical Hacking and Penetration Testing Foundation course. Is a course for starters, for beginners, if you want to, or even for experienced pen testers that want to actually understand why, how, when, where, and the different details of what should be in a pen test, how to carry out a pen test. And this course follows the CompTIA PenTest Plus certification. And it's very detailed. I've summarized everything into a 99-page slide. And I'm taking that as a giveaway bonus for my subscribers. So if you're new here, you could kindly subscribe, make a comment, questions, feedback, and let's get the ball rolling. So this is module 2 in the ethical hacking and penetration testing course. Before now, we've talked about the different stages, and we talked about the first module, which is planning and scoping. Scoping is very important. Scoping is very ideal. If you plan properly, it will help you make sure that you stay within scope. It will help you so that you can deliver value. It will help you so that you are within budget. It will assist you to make sure that you don't go overboard. Legal framework, reasons why you need to do penetration testing and the rest. In module 2, we're going to be looking at information gathering and vulnerability identification. So the question is, footprinting and enumeration, which is the first step in penetration testing. The reason why you want to do that is to gather information. And that's what we call OSSINT, open source intelligence gathering, right? Open source intelligence gathering. Quite some intelligence gathering you're going to be doing. Some might be open, some might not be open. But you want to start from the known to the unknown. That's why OSSINT comes handy. And it can be passive, it can be active. For instance, if I call you and ask you, where is the location of your company and which street are you on? That is an active kind of engagement, right? That is an active kind of footprinting. But if I just Google up the name of your company, I see the address, I put it on Google Map, I do the map view, and I see what your home address, what your office address looks like. I see what the door is like. I see what the roof looks like, because Google Maps Street View can do that for you. So that is a passive method for actually looking up at, for instance, a location. Same thing, a passive kind of attack. This can be passive, this can be active, so to say. Is you pick up the website address, you put it on, for instance, you run CMD command, either on Windows or Kali or whatever operating system, and you get the IP address of this particular website. That is an example of you doing some basic footprinting and reconnaissance. Or is it, for instance, you use Nmap within the network to run a scan on the network to see the topology, how the network of the company is laid out? You're not attacking yet, but you are attacking. You're not attacking, meaning that you just still gather information. You are attacking, meaning that it's this first stage of attack that helps you to now carry out a proper attack. So OSSINT is very important, open source intelligence gathering, and there are several ways you could do footprinting and reconnaissance. There are several ways. Actually, footprinting and enumeration, footprinting, for instance, we say there are 5 stages of hack, or 5 stages of 5 levels deep into you trying to hack. Well, let's say the first stage is you doing footprinting and reconnaissance. We say the second stage is enumeration of scanning. We'll say the third stage is gaining access. We'll say the fourth stage is maintaining access. And we'll say the fifth stage is clearing tracks. So for you to hack any system, the first thing you want to do is to do footprinting reconnaissance, right? If you like, go add enumeration to that, or the second step, you say scanning and enumeration. Then on the third step, like I said, you do gaining access. Then the fourth step, maintaining access. Then the last step, the fifth step is clearing tracks. So before you hack, before you do gain access, which is about the third step, you have to first gather the information. Understand the basic things about that environment, right? Once you do that, the next thing you want to do is to now start scanning. The good advantage of your first two stages is that you can understand the infrastructure. You could get things like in second stages of scanning, you could get things like shares, things like usernames and the rest, things like emails, things like IP address. So because you cannot be getting access to something that you don't even have the username for, are you there? So you have to first get the first stage, two stages done before you can now gain access. So footprinting and enumeration, it's very important. And most of these things, you want to document them down. So information gathering and vulnerability identification. So you conduct information gathering, vulnerability scanning, you conduct some vulnerability scans, you leverage information for exploits, then you see if you have weaknesses. Then what kind of questions can I expect on test day, right? First three objectives are given a scenario. Given a scenario, what do I want to do? The other objectives, the two other two objectives are explain only, right? This is if, for instance, you're writing an exam or you're doing an interview for a pen test. You could use a simulation on Nmap. Nmap is network mapper. If you go to nmap.org, you could download the application. You could use it to scan your network, all the kind of things you're going to get if you use Nmap. The GUI version is ZenMap. If you want to use that to scan your network, you could get things like IP addresses, shares, things like topology. You could draw the network topology for you. If you're new to networking, you could take up a course on the Cisco IT. We are Academy. You could check that up or inbox or send an email so that you understand good deal of networking. That's why if you want to do penetration testing, for instance, it's good you have some foundation in web programming, some foundation in networking. It will help you a great deal because what you're actually trying to test are actually IT infrastructure. What you want to test are IT infrastructure. What you want to test is websites, networks, cloud servers, email servers, mobile apps, right? So it will be much, much more easier if you can set up or build most of these things. So you could use simulation on Nmap. Given a scenario, conduct information gathering using appropriate techniques. You want to perform vulnerability scan. Now, how to explain the difference between a vulnerability scan and a penetration test, right? They go hand in hand, but they are slightly different. So at times we call them vulnerability assessment and penetration test. So VAPT, it's the nomenclature. Now, for you to do a pen test, you have to do a vulnerability assessment. So that's why they go hand in hand. So the question is, what's a vulnerability assessment? A vulnerability assessment is you trying to check for system loopholes, right? A simple vulnerability assessment for a network is to see if the passwords are there or not. Another is to see if you have a password, are they secured? Are they long? Are they strong enough? Another thing can be, who have access to the network? Do they have access to everything on the network or some portions of the network, right? Another thing you could ask is, people outside the range of the building, can they have access to that particular network? Are you broadcasting too far away from who needs it? All of these things are basic vulnerabilities that you can have in a system or in a network. So a vulnerability assessment is now going to go ahead, either you using manual scans or software-based scans or using baseline standards to check, which is just like an audit. You cannot document all of that. Whereas a penetration testing is you now trying to exploit all of those vulnerabilities that you have seen to see if you're going to have a successful attack or not. So you see, you first do a vulnerability. Of course, you do a reconnaissance of vulnerability. You first understand what you're trying to do vulnerability assessment for. After you do that, the next thing you want to do is to now do some kind of scans to check if you have vulnerabilities. After you're done with that, the next thing you want to now do is to now start trying to attack them. So you now simulate an actual attack to see if, for the fact that I don't have that I have access to the network, does it mean I can have access to very critical and important items on the network? So you might have a vulnerability and you don't have likelihood of an attack. And of course, one of the reasons why is that we have what we call residual risks. Because at times when you're trying to secure an IT infrastructure, when you're trying to secure a system, you most of the time don't cover all of your risks. In your risk management strategy, there are some risks you are going to accept. Don't forget the 4 ways you handle it, like we looked earlier on, is for you to accept, mitigate, transfer. I think, is it control? Was the last one also? So you might need to accept some risks. That's the one you just can't do away with. That you're accepting that risk doesn't mean that you can be attacked. Doesn't always mean that you can be attacked. So that's the slight difference between vulnerability testing and penetration testing. So vulnerability testing is just for you to see what is the loopholes and the flaws you have, document that, whereas a penetration testing is actually you now hacking. Okay, so information gathering. So reconnaissance, I've explained that. So some of the techniques you can use is use the internet, use open source research, social engineering, dumpster diving. Dumpster diving is you going to people have credit card details printed, passwords. I've consulted for a company where all of the pieces they have within the company, they have the password, because the passwords are kind of long, very hard to remember. So they type it out in a document, laminate it, it's handy. So when you want to work on the system admin goes to the system and types in the password for you, and it goes back, keeps the papers secured somewhere. Of course, after some months, that paper is going to get not so good again. So they'll throw it away. The question is, the countermeasure to that is that, are you shredding that paper or are you just throwing it away? If you throw it away, somebody can have access to that particular paper, credit card information, passwords, things like account statement, bank statements, payroll, all of those information can be in a dump. So people can go dumpster dive so they can get access to information that can now help them to further create or commit an attack. Email harvesting. So if I can get details of the emails, if I see emails, of course, I cannot know what the domain name or the URL of the company is. For instance, if I see Victor at southtechventures.com, of course, I know there is a southtechventures.com. So what kind of information are you looking at? Phone numbers, contact names, email address, security-related information, and the rest. So look at this job advert. This is a big vulnerability, right? So somebody doing reconnaissance and footprinting for a particular company can get to see this job advert. And what is bad about this job advert? It's too specific. It's too detailed, right? If you're looking for the system administrator, it doesn't mean you should spell out blank, white and black, all of the things you use within your organization. Here it's stated 2000, 2003 certification desired. Why not just say have an MCSE, have a Microsoft System as certified engineer, right? Have that certification. Why not just say have Unix, Linux experience? Why mention HP Blade systems, right? Don't be specific. Shift work is required. Just say flexible work, whatever. By the time you get specific, you let somebody outside of your world paint a picture of your technology, your operations, and how you carry out things within your organization. That will make you susceptible to an attack. Same thing here. Imagine be able to maintain 200 Linux servers, Red Hat, SUSE. So you are stating how many servers you have, right? And you could be very, very close to an attack with this. I would likely want to attack someone that have 200 Linux servers and someone that just have 10 Linux servers. So you make yourself out there. What are kind of some of the tools you can use to carry out reconnaissance, right? So you have NSLOOKUP, traceroute, ping. So some of them are softwares. Some of them are what I call utilities or command line interface. They're not standalone softwares, kind of. Like for NSLOOKUP, you could run this on your command line interface. Same thing with traceroute, same thing with ping. Whois, Kali Linux have this. You could run this on command line, or you just go to whois.com. Put in the name of the domain name there. You're going to see what's it called? You're going to see the result of the scan you've just done. After this series of training, as time will permit me, I might release another set of videos that will now take hands-on some of these tools for all of the different modules I've covered. Same thing with domain dossier, email dossier, Google social networking site, discover.sh, Multigo. Multigo is a very nice tool that can do some kind of topology, get you details of either a domain name, an email, a name, an IP address, a phone number, or the rest. It's on Kali Linux. You can also install it on a Windows machine. Putting it all together, you've collected examples of emails, phone numbers, servers, and the rest. You cannot use these information to now draft a potential spear phishing email. So what do you call a spear phishing email? Put it very simple, targeted email. I know your email from my what was it called? My reconnaissance and footprinting. I know you work at a particular company. I know your address. I know your operations. I know the kind of responsibilities, the kind of things you do. I could send an email to you and say, can you reset your whatever on this particular vendor that I know you do have or you utilize? That is you trying to progress in creating an attack. You could take it further. Domain name squatting, right? This is an offense actually, but you know, hackers most of the times they want to live in a mode kind of nothing to lose. You see titancipher.com, and somebody used Titan Cipher, and it's a Y compared to an I. Somebody not very careful, that employee not very careful, can access this website thinking, is this website? And this website is a clone of this website. By the time you're putting your original, your okay, your confirmed username and password here, that can be logged, kept, and you're redirected to this guy. And you ask yourself, I didn't log in. You log in again, but by the time you're doing that, your data have already been stolen. The next thing is scanning and enumeration. So scanning is you actively connecting to the system and getting response, identify open ports and closed ports, services, running systems, and the rest. So this is more an active form of reconnaissance. So what are the different types of scanning, or what are the kind of nodes you can scan, or what are the kind of assets you can scan? You could scan a host, that's a computer. You could scan systems, networks, computers, mobile device. And don't forget, a PC can be a host, it can also be a server, printers, and the rest. These are the different types of enumeration. Typically, what are you getting? right? How do you scan? So you use tools and publicly available information. When you're footprinting, you're trying to gather software versions, you're trying to gather no operating systems. When you're banner grabbing, you're trying to get details about what something is made up of. When you're packet crafting, you're trying to use something like Nmap is on Kali, you could use it on Windows, Netcat, the NC and the Netcat, then HPing is on Kali also. Packet manipulation, where you're trying to send modified packets to a particular system so that you could get some information from it. Then packet inspection, where you're trying to use something like Wireshark. Wireshark is spelled WIRESHARK. The latest version should be about 3 point something. You're trying to use that to investigate packets moving across a network, right? All of these are different ways you could do footprinting. Cryptographic inspection. So how can you do this? You have a wireless network, you have different types of encryption, you have web, WPA, WPA2. Somebody using web, of course, is less secure to somebody using WPA2, right? Now, if the files are not encrypted, they are more susceptible to an attack. Somebody have a website and it doesn't have SSL or TLS or have encryption, or using an unverified or an unadapted or an unsigned security, it makes the website susceptible to an attack. So all of this is under cryptographic inspection. Cryptography is you trying to, I can say, when we say cryptography, we say the encryption, decryption of data, right? That study, because for everything you want to make secured, most of the times you have encryption embedded. Is it your phone? That your password lock, that's encryption. Your laptop, by the time you're signing in, that your password is always encrypted. Your website, that username and password is encrypted on the database. So cryptography and encryption is a whole new, is it not a new topic, it's a topic on its own. I'll find time and do some training on that. If you take the CompTIA S+ or the CompTIA PenTest or the EC Council CH or the CISSP, of course, that's the gold standard for cybersecurity. If you take any of these, or you take the Cisco CyberOps, that's the Cisco Operation, Cybersecurity Operations Associate course, encryption is always a chapter on its own. Decompiling and debugging. So this is where you have an application, you want to open it up to see how it is made. This field is synonymous to digital forensics, right? Where you actually want to do either a static analysis or a live analysis or a dynamic analysis, right? So you do all of these things to try to better understand the assets you are dealing with. So I talked about OSSINT earlier on. So there are some websites that can help you provide some latest techniques and vulnerabilities. So you have them here: SAT, JPSAT, NIST. I love NIST very, very, very well, right? And they have a database, a national vulnerability database, and NIST have various frameworks. You want to look it up. I love this one a lot too because it has common vulnerabilities and exposures. For every type of vulnerability you have that has been known, most of the times they get documented. And that's one thing you need to know when it comes to you using systems, IT systems. If you're using an older system, of course, it then means they have vulnerabilities. And that vulnerability and how they can be attacked most times are documented. So patching your operating systems, patching your systems, your websites, your applications you have on cloud servers and the rest, your mobile apps, is one sure way you can stay ahead. That is just one way actually. Now, because if you use something older, they fall under these common vulnerabilities and exposures. Okay, so you have, in terms of vulnerability scan, you have, I've talked about this. What are the kind of things you're scanning? The host, the system, the network. What are you trying to scan? Is it credentialed scan or non-credentialed scan? Is it the guys that have an account system or the guys that doesn't have an account system? What kind of scan do you want to do? You want to do just a discovery scan? I just want to see what operating systems they have. For instance, you can use Nmap to do that. It will give you things like percent of assurance. If you use Nmap to scan, let's say a network, and it finds Windows operating systems, it's going to tell you that I am sure this is an NT system on Windows 10, 98%. It will now tell you something like 95% or 80% Windows 8, like that, down. Of course, you should tell from that kind of scan that you're running a Windows 10 system. So it's going to tell you in percentage how sure it is. Or are you doing a full scan? So Nmap as a tool have some of these options. In later videos, I'm going to run some of these tools and showcase how that can be done. Then still scan, like the military will normally say a covert operation. So what do you call a covert operation? So a covert operation is that operation that you take on the enemy without the enemy being aware. In tech, we say stealth. We don't normally say covert, but they are synonymous words. So when you do a stealth scan, you want to do what we call fragmentation of your scan. If I'm sending 50 packets or 100 packets, for instance, to this device so that I can get information from the device. So instead of sending that 100 packets, that full scan, I send it in bits so that if I have an intrusion detection system there, if I have a prevention system that can detect me, I might fool it and make it not aware that I'm running a scan. So that kind of scan, you call it a stealth scan. Or are you running a compliance scan where you're trying to make sure that the organization complies to either a NIST framework, a government agency framework, a corporate governance strategy, or a payments industry, or an ISO certification or compliance, whatever. Okay, discovery scan, it can be a less intrusive scan, just a swing sweep. So a pink sweep is where you just, for instance, if my IP address is 192.168.8.1, which is normally my server, then I might want to scan from 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, up to let's say 255. Now, a pink sweep is just you scanning to see which of those systems are available. If I have 10 systems, it's going to be able to bring back my IP address. Or I might just want to create a network map. When I showcase some of these things practically in my subsequent videos, you get to understand that. Or you could subscribe to any of the cybersecurity courses. You have most of these things being implemented. Full scan, of course, I've explained that. So this is what the stealth scan does. There's what we call a three-way handshake. A three-way handshake is where I have a sync arc, and a reset. Now we call these things flags, right? A sync, and an acknowledge, a reset, I think there are about 6, 7 more if I can remember them. Okay, a sync, an acknowledge, a reset, a push, a finish, an urgent, right? These are the different types of scans you can have. Explained most of these things more in my security videos. Sorry, in my networking videos. You call this a three-way handshake. So most of the times when you are doing a stealth scan, you don't go three-way. You just send just sync and try to get response without going full way. Because if you go full way, if you have an IPS on IDS, it's going to recognize that actually there's an engagement, there's a transaction, there's a packet coming from this area. Conduct scans by sending a sync pack and then analyzing the response. So you just send only this, you get a response and you analyze. If you go three-way handshake, that is a full TCP connection. And of course, most intrusion detection systems are going to be able to identify that. Yes, I didn't send anything to you. I did not ask anything of you. Why are you sending such kind of packets? And most of the times, it's going to be flagged and stopped. Even basic antivirus systems have those things, have what we call HIDs, host intrusion detection systems within them. So they can be able to detect some of these scans when you run them. So the best is to conduct a stealth scan so that you are not found, to get some kind of information like the IP address of the system, the operating system of the system, all of those kind of information. So I talked about compliance scan as meaning when you want to conform to maybe regulation. What are the kind of tools you can use to perform vulnerability assessment? So you have Qualys, you have Tenable, you have Rapid7, you have OpenVAS, you have NIC2. These are tools that you can use. You have web applications, you have things like SQL Map, you have OWASP Zap. These are tools you can also use to do vulnerability scanning. Okay, scanning consideration. When do you run the scans? What protocols will you use? Where do you run the scan from? Some organizations can say, please, we want you to do it within our network. Bandwidth limitation, because for every scan you conduct, you're actually interacting with the network, right? So fragile or non-traditional systems, what should you scan and what should you exempt? Before moving into exploration, we need to understand the basics of attack techniques. So you can be doing cross-compiling code, you can be exploiting modifications, you can be doing some chaining in the sense that you try to do different types of exploits, but all chained together. You might be trying to do some proof of concept development. You want to try something to see if it's going to work. Socially, Joy have explained this. Credential brute force, you want to try to subsequently attack continuously to see if you're going to have a success. Dictionary attack, you're trying to have words laid out and try to then one after the other. For a rainbow table attack, you're trying to have a passwords now computed. Then you now try that as if you're going to have success. Deception, I just finished a research on a literature on deception techniques. Very wonderful study I did using down variable web application. So these are some of the kind of techniques you could use to do an attack. Kali Linux have quite a number of tools, so you could start exploring that. So this is what I just explained earlier on. So exploit chaining, proof of concept, social engineering. This is people, the credential brute forcing, the dictionary attack, then rainbow table. So you have the pre-computed hash values of the known username and password, and you try to see if you can use it to attack. So how do you defend against some of these type of attacks? You want to limit exposures, right? You don't want to allow your infrastructure to be tested by every Dick and Harry, every type of software. You want to have an IPS, an intrusion prevention system. Very good anti-malware systems even have embedded in them some NIDS. You want to have a SIEM, you want to have a monitoring system for your network. These are some of the things you could do to mitigate that. How do you prevent, right? Use captchas to prevent bots from gaining access. Try to log and blacklist. You could use a CDN, Cloudflare, Imperva, so many systems out there you could use to make sure that before people get to your system, they go through a delivery network. Summary, gathering information is very important. You could use OSSINT. if you want to be successful, you have to learn how to build comprehensive information gathering plan. And that is only when you can be successful. Because if you don't understand where you're going to, you will not be able to have access to when you get there. Okay, I think that's the end of the module 2 of this course. See you in module 3.